Oh, kia ora, 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 kia ora. Good afternoon. I'm still trying to say good morning every time, George. Morning, George.
Good morning.
And good morning, Jeremy. How are you, sir? You're with us, Jeremy.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah. I'm doing pretty good, mate.
I have a bit of an internet issue, so
yeah. Well, listen, we're gonna
hang on. You guys carry on. I'm gonna reload.
Yeah. The beauty of live television. Well, not that it's television, internet. Hey, good to be with you all today. Listen, now for weeks I've been talking about numbers to do with COVID and to do with this 1 to 5,000 or whatever it is, 1,000 per million cases. We're going to delve a bit more deeply into that today. We're going to have coming to join us shortly Dr. Anna Brooks from Auckland University. Anna Brooks is currently researching COVID-19 and the post-viral condition long COVID. So Anna is a perfect person to talk to. Morning, Ian, Jeremy. Afternoon.
That seems to be better. Hi.
About the situation. So she's going to be joining us in about 10 minutes. And what I want to do, because I've talked about this a lot, but as George pointed out today, if we're talking about this number of 1,000 per million cases, it's about our quote unquote safe zone. Now, the safe zone is my word. That's not what the modelers have said, but they're basically saying we'll get to this plateau. So we call it the plateau of normality. There you go. There's the word for it. But I've never shown where that came from. So I want to play that clip and talk about it and demonstrate to you what's been talked about. And then I want to show you some numbers to do with Southern. Jeremy, when I used to know you on a more day-to-day basis, you were living on Auckland's North Shore. Is that still the case?
It is indeed.
Right.
Yep, correct.
So because of that, I brought up some Waitemata numbers as well, because that affects where you live. And for other people, they can do their own research into looking into doing that. We're also going to talk about Chloe Swarbrick and her idea of harm care, harm minimization. What's the official
harm
word?
reduction?
Harm reduction.
Harm reduction. When it comes to, I guess, drug and alcohol care, and is it best to throw people in jail, or is it best to try and help them sort of get better? What's the deal with that? And also, it's sort of it's a part of a COVID conversation as well, talking about calls by many, especially in the hospitality sector, for the 7-day isolation to go away if you don't have COVID. So there's a bunch of conversations going on today. But the first thing I wanted to start with, and primarily, Jeremy, I wanted to start with it for two reasons. One is I am a huge fan of this man. In the early 1990s, I had a 3 set of his VHSs, and I watched them again and again and again and again. Anything that Billy Connolly was in, I was into. Sadly, I never got to see him live, and I know he came to New Zealand numerous times, but I never got to enjoy that. But I know a lot of people who did, and they talk of a pretty amazing man that he was as well. Now, have you ever met him, Jeremy, in your circles or been around him?
Yes, I have. I had a fantastic moment when my wife and I were in Queenstown. We were doing a show, and we got in a day early. And at the hotel we were staying at, we kept seeing this guy in the hotel bar, and Michelle kept saying to me, "God, that guy looks like Billy Connolly." And I popped outside, and his massive trike, when he used to do those world tour, was parked outside, and I came back and went, "It is." And we just did it. We just went over. We figured, I don't know. It's kind of I guess it's some comedians are a strange bunch. We just went over and said, "Hi, look, we don't want to interrupt. We're comedians." And as soon as we said that, he was like, "Oh, sit down." And we talked for 2 hours, and he just told stories, and we hung out, and and he was an absolute gentleman, lovely man.
Okay. You get those moments in life where you go, I fucking hate you so.
And the interesting thing is, you're going to hate this even more, Pat, is that I have all the respect in the world. I know he's a genius. I did not grow up a fan. He was one of those comedians I was obviously 100% aware of, but I think up until when I say recently, in the last, I didn't grow up watching his specials. I didn't grow up seeing his stuff. So so even worse, maybe that made it better actually, because I didn't completely fanboy when I met him. But absolutely lovely bloke, and one of those truly special moments. I met him and I met Robin Williams, and basically that's my professional career complete. I'm happy with that.
Nice. But you've never met George in person, and I've met George.
True. So. There you go. Yeah, that's right.
So he got a BAFTA in the weekend, and he's got Parkinson's, and I want to talk very quickly. We're going to get to the other conversations, only 5-10 minutes away. So this will be a quick little thing for Billy. But he's got Parkinson's, and I want to play, if you haven't heard the story of how he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, it's a unique and interesting story. So I wanted to play this for a couple of reasons. One is it's lovely to see him again. Two, the joy emulating, is that the right word, from the man is palpable.
Emanating, I think. Yeah.
From the man is palpable. He's obviously dealt with the idea that he's got Parkinson's and he can't do things for himself now as much. There's a lot of camera cuts, so obviously this would have taken a long time to record, and they would have had to make sure Billy and his wife Pamela were happy and comfortable with the outcome. But I wanted to bring Billy in to show what's happening to him today, who he is, the delightful man he still is. And also, it's a little bit of a testament to someone who's going through, a life-ending serious situation and how he's dealing with it. So this is Billy Connolly. I don't know if we'll play all of it, but it's his acceptance speech to the honorary BAFTA that he got given a couple of days ago.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is I, Billy Connolly, accepting my wonderful thing. It's just beautiful, isn't it? I'm very proud to receive this. Life is good. I haven't been on the stage for about 2 years. This is kind of nice, and it suits me. And the symptom spotters among you may notice that my left is different from my right. It's just one of these things. Parkinson's disease. I suffer badly from the disease. And my wife puts on my clothes in the morning and takes them off at night. It's a jolly life. I've got no complaints. I got a gig once in Scotland 50 years ago to show you how the world has changed. It was in Stornoway in the Western Isles. And I went there and I discovered I didn't have my earring with me. And I decided to buy one and shake the locals. I went to the jeweler's shop and they pulled out a rack of earrings. They were all swinging. There was daffodils and flowers and stars, diamonds. But there was none, just the hoop I was looking for. There was one, but it had an extra bit on it. I couldn't be bothered, and I was looking upset, and the guy said, "What type of earring does she normally wear?" I said, "Well, it's for me." He said, "We don't really stock men's earrings. The world is a different place." I've got to like television when they let me do what I want to do. When they let me do what I think I should be doing. There used to be directors and stuff telling you what to do and what to say. And I always felt awkward. I wasn't doing what I was good at. I eventually got to the position where I said, "I'm not saying that. I want to say this." And we say that, and it was a huge success. And it was lovely. So I went from strength to strength on television. And here we are today, getting this award. I couldn't be happier. It's made me such a happy man, getting these good attendance medals now that my career's out the window. It's lovely talking to you. Cheerio.
And there you go. So the Fellowship Award. And it was, I mean, like, not to be now too depressing about this lovely, great man. It's like, it almost felt a little bit like maybe it was a swan song. Maybe we won't really see him again on screens. And he came and he went, "I love you all. It's been a great life. I'll see you later." And I just wanted to play it. And well, Jeremy, even though I want to play this on, is there anything you want to say about? I don't know if you've seen that yet or not, but seeing that,
I haven't. And Isn't it just amazing? I mean, the guy, nobody tells a story like that, man.
I know you can't. I couldn't interrupt it, even if I wanted to move on. You just can't. With Billy's talking, you can't interrupt it.
Yeah, and he's he's a different breed. We comedians. He came from the folk music scene. So the stories, his comedy was essentially, he was a musician. They were the stories that he would tell in between songs. And it's a style that just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it hardly existed when he did it, to be fair. He's a unicorn in that sense. And you know what? If it is a swan song, then there's worse things to to have as your swan song than an acceptance speech of a lifetime achievement award at the BAFTAs, for God's sake. Go on.
I like his story when he talked about going from playing folk music. He said the talking between the songs got longer and longer, and the playing of the music got shorter and shorter. Then he was almost inadvertently a stand-up comedian.
Pretty much, yeah.
There's a clip that I've got. I'm not going to play the whole clip because it talks about how he got diagnosed with all these things that were quite serious. Like on Monday, he got a hearing aid. On Tuesday, he got told he had prostate cancer. On Wednesday, on the phone, he got told he had Parkinson's disease. But the thing that I wanted to also put out there, maybe it's a bit of a PSA. My dad was diagnosed with prostate cancer 20 years ago. He was at a Rotary meeting where he heard a person talking, and they said, I had no signs of prostate cancer. I had no symptoms. On paper, I didn't have it. I got a test and I got it. And he goes, and I encourage all you men to go out there and get tested, even if you have no signs, but you're in the age bracket. My dad was exactly the same. He had no signs, he had no nothing. He went and got tested and he had it. And because he got it so early, it was able to be something that he got through and worked through. And that, I kind of relate to that story to this because it's fascinating. And I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to pick up the story, but it's only 20 seconds of Billy explaining how he kind of got his first diagnosis of Parkinson's. I just want to play that out. And then we're going to move on and talk to Dr. Anna Brox. Have a listen.
Parkinson's was strange because it was amazing grace, how sweet. The Parkinson's was strange because it was a man in a hotel spotted it, and he said, "Excuse me, Billy," he said, "I'm a big fan and I don't want to depress you or anything, but I'm a surgeon from Tasmania," he said, "and I think the way you walk, he said, your gait would suggest that you have early onset Parkinson's disease. See your doctor." And he was right.
So there you go. A doctor saw him walking in a hotel lobby and said, because of the way you walk, you might have Parkinson's. And he had Parkinson's. I know that's not any better for a diagnosis for Billy, but it's an interesting thing to put out there about his situation. Right. Let us talk about, have you guys heard of this thing, COVID? It's been around for a while. Is there any acknowledgement to this thing that's been going on, this COVID thing?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
I don't know anything about it, but I heard my neighbor talking about it the other day. I'm like, what is this thing? I mean, I've heard nothing of it. So I thought it might be worth investigating. From the University of Auckland, Dr. Anna Brox is joining us. Oh, I've got to find my mouse. Sorry, Anna. There we go. Morning, Anna.
Morning.
Hey, thank you so much. Oh, yes, sorry. We've moved our time for a week to see what it's like. And so, yes, it's afternoon, Anna. People will think we're just fudging the live stream, Jeremy.
Yeah.
But thank you for joining us. The reason we've brought you on is to talk about the leak from within the ministry about COVID, specifically mask wearing in schools. Now, I have a personal, I nearly said vendetta. No, I have a personal interest in this because I have two children currently at school. I won't even say their ages because I do not want to identify any part of the schools, but two different levels of schools. And at the end of last term, both schools informed us that they were no longer going to enforce the mask mandate. And then both schools are also going, but it's highly recommended you wear one, but we're not going to enforce it. The reason it's a bit rawer for me right now, without getting too dramatic, is I have one of my two children upstairs in their bedroom with a headache and a sore throat. And the school that the child is at, and I know I'm not being a soccer mom here, but my children are very responsible. They're wearing their masks at all time, other than when they're eating and outside. But I learned the other day that the school that one of my children who's upstairs is at is having their kids have their lunches inside. So all the kids that are wearing masks are then exposed to all the kids who aren't wearing masks inside to have their lunch. So I feel like for me, there's a bit of a structural letdown at the moment. So my kids are doing the right thing. We're doing the right thing. But there's a situation around them that I feel like if, for example, and she tested negative this morning, but if she tested positive for COVID, which is sort of what we're expecting, so that's how we're preparing ourselves at the moment, then it's the structures that have let her down, not what she, as a not yet teenager, is being responsible to a really high degree, actually. So just some background as to why I have a bit of skin in this game, more so than many. Look, before we get into the leaked email, is there anything you want to jump in with, Anna? You're the expert here as to what I've just said, or the situation in general.
Well, yeah, I think so. So we, a bunch of us, COVID peeps, got together because we were also alarmed about this. As soon as Orange was coming up, and that meant woohoo, COVID was over. COVID was over, no more masking and all the rest of it. That was alarming because we have low rates of vaccination in children, and kids go to school and congregate and get exposed, and then kids bring COVID home and all the rest of it. And plus also, just we don't want widespread infection in children. We still don't know the long-term impacts. So obviously, one of the areas I work in is understanding what this virus does when we get infected. And it's not looking rosy, right? So we want to limit infections. So we were totally alarmed by this happening as well, that, that schools weren't going to be required to mask, or children weren't required to mask in schools. So we wish that the language was stronger there, and, even required, not strongly encouraged or whatever. So what we were mostly alarmed about here was the inequities, because it was handed to the schools to decide themselves. And as you've described, your child might be masking, or they might tell you they're masking. That happens too. Kids will do that as well. Yes, mum and dad, I'm masking at school, and maybe they're not, because children are children, peer pressure.
Yeah.
If most people aren't masking, that's going to happen too. So that's happened in my immediate family as well, where that's yes, a child's brought home COVID, and the understanding was that there was masking at school, and there just wasn't. So
Jeremy, Jeremy, I just want to jump on one more thing. If you want to jump in before I go to this email, you can pick whether you want to do that or not, Jeremy. But the thing that I want to make really clear as well, Anna, to people who are watching, is what the schools are doing. Some of the schools, because there are still some who are enforcing masks. What the schools are doing is saying we're following ministry advice. However, what it seems is that the ministry is not following the epidemiologist's advice. So rather than the schools going, we're following the epidemiologist's advice, they're following what's fast seeming to become more political. And I want to add as well, the principals who are saying, and I've seen this in writing, we're not the health experts, so we can't make these decisions, so we're following the health experts. What they're actually doing is they're actually kicking the can down the road, and they're making the 12-year-olds the health experts.
Yes.
So the principals are absolving themselves of responsibility and forcing the 6-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds to be the ones that ultimately are making a health decision while we're in a fucking pandemic.
But should it be schools that make healthcare decisions as well? No. So that's where we're coming from. That it shouldn't be each school making a public health decision. The advice and recommendations should absolutely be coming from ministry, and we just felt that language needed to be stronger, right? So that. Because otherwise it's which principal who is instilling what they believe, because ultimately that's what it comes down to, right? It's going to be board of trustees or however it's each independent school's governed. And so it's a postcode lottery whether your child is protected at school, isn't it?
Can I ask, sorry, Anna, can I ask, you quite rightfully bring up the information and the education. Are we still suffering a little bit of a hangover of the fact that it sort of got thrown around as a hard fact very early in the pandemic, and I'm talking about the first variant, and even Delta to a certain degree. There was sort of this feeling that kids didn't get it.
Yes, that was exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually said out loud that children get it, or if they get it, it's it's very mild. But that's simply not the case with Omicron, is it?
Exactly. And so that has changed. So you're right. Like, it was referred to that children aren't as impacted as adults. And that was true. And as you say, even with Delta. But, we didn't have enough training, like as in, New Zealand didn't have enough time and the world didn't have enough time to understand what the impacts of these new variants were on children. And essentially what happened in New Zealand is Omicron hit here, only a few, not long after it hit the UK. And so everyone's like, is this the same? And so all we had to go on is what was happening internationally at only a month before, or very close behind. So, and we were absolutely hearing, and again, it's all anecdotal because there's no time for research, but we were hearing more and more kids were getting sick, and we were hearing more kids were getting hospitalized and things like that. But on top of that, the big difference between the UK and here is we had a vaccination. Our children here were going to be vaccinated. In the UK, they were still slow, but the other comparison we make here is that when Delta hit, the adults got locked up, right? Lock them up and vaccinate them safely. Then Omicron hit and we threw the children out to schools in the middle of the pandemic, right? So, and so, yes, I think a lot of it was that hangover, as you say, from, children will bounce back, they're less impacted. And largely that's still the case, that many little ones will, have it mildly, but certainly some are really getting kicked by this virus and some will have long-term impacts. We just know that on the whole, children are less impacted by infection, but that doesn't mean that we should use the children as, the guinea pigs here. So that's why we're sort of saying, if we don't know the long-term impacts, should we be testing it on our younger generation? So that's all we were pushing for.
Let's have a look at this leaked ministry email now. So this has come from within the ministry. A senior data analyst is the person who is said to have sent this. It's been seen by Newsroom and they've written a story on it. A data analyst within the Ministry of Education has gone rogue, calling for a reinstatement of school mask mandate. In an email, the government disavows. Now, we talked a bit about this yesterday, so we won't go too much at it, but the government is being accused of being asleep at the wheel when it comes to protecting children from COVID-19 in an internal email obtained by Newsroom. I will read some of this out because this has some of the details, and then this links back to you, Anna, the article as well, and what you guys are doing. The leak of the message comes after 150 New Zealand scientists and health professionals signed an open letter to the government calling on it to reinstate the school mask mandate and implement other protections in schools. The letter was signed by some of the most prominent independent voices in New Zealand's COVID-19 response, including University of Otago epidemiologist Michael Baker, University of Otago microbiologist Susie Wiles, and University of Auckland pediatrician Jen Russell. You have not asked specifically for more advice on the matter of masks in schools, but the matter is too urgent and critical to wait for a request. The official, who holds a senior role as a data analyst, wrote in the message viewed by Newsroom. The email had the subject line COVID-19 asleep at the wheel. I strongly support the contents of the letter signed by 150 New Zealand scientists and doctors and the call from the Disability Rights Commissioner urging us to reinstate the mask mandate in schools. The analyst wrote that it didn't matter whether Omicron could be completely stopped or whether the mask mandate could be fully enforced. This is the bit that I think the principals need to hear. We still have a responsibility to prevent as many children as possible from being infected and reinfected with SARS-2. It is a dangerous disease whose long-term effects are as yet unknown, and many of our tamariki remain unvaccinated. Without masks, they stand very little protection at all. The email also directly criticised Hipkins' comments on Newshub Nation about each school being able to make its own decision on whether to require masks. It was extremely distressing as an analyst to hear Chris Hipkins admit over the weekend that measures in schools are based on what is popular, not based on evidence. This is not the kind of leadership we should expect or accept from our minister. The analyst concluded by saying it was officials' duty to prevent as much infection and reinfection as possible. If you have decision-making power in this ministry, please use it to protect children. If you do not, please talk to your boss and ask them if this is really what we stand for. Either of you are welcome to jump in.
I'll defer to Anna, but
Defer to
I will.
Anna.
Yeah, but I will say, because I mean you've already brought this up, Anna. It's our response to COVID. I think asleep at the wheel is something you can't necessarily accuse this government of being. That's not me defending their decision in this case, but one of the things I think that people, because so much of our response has been quite rapid, people have lost track of the idea that we still don't know anything really about the long-term effects of these illnesses. My father's an epidemiologist, by the way, so the one upside for him of COVID is that people know what that is for the first time in his 40-plus year career. But I mean, that's one of the things well before this that epidemiologists have struggled with, is that people just assume that we know about science, that, okay, we've got a vaccine for this illness, therefore we know what it does. But the truth is, the long-term effects are still, we're only 2 and a bit years into this virus existing.
Exactly.
Yeah, so sorry. I mean, that's just my 2 cents worth, and I'll defer to the expert now. I'll hand over.
well, the key thing here, though, in the letter that we wrote, and it's collected even more signatures, I think we're mid 200s now, is that we're calling for vaccines plus. A vaccine is not a magic bullet, because, that vaccine was developed for, did great against even up to Delta, even though, all the mutations that were happening. But Omicron was a different beast. And, the worst thing that happened when Omicron hit was, Omicron's mild. And it's like, no, Omicron is mild on populations that were either already rampantly infected or vaccinated or both. And in fact, the research is coming out now absolutely saying that Omicron is no different to OG, original gangster strain. So, and in fact, that's apparently a technical term now, OG, the original variant. So what we're pushing for here is that a vaccine is not a magic bullet. So it absolutely protects against hospitalization. And as you just pointed out as well, the vaccination rates in children are still drastically low. So, these kids in schools, unmasked and surrounded by the waves that are happening, let's be honest, they're going to keep coming. Winter's going to be worse. So what we're calling for as an sort of an expert opinion group is sort of saying it's not just vaccines that are going to get us through this. If we start making changes now and normalizing that it's not cool to just spread viruses around everywhere, not just SARS-CoV-2, we're going to get the flu soon. Who knows what our new tourists are bringing in? Like we're going to get RSV, we're going to get flu, and oh my goodness, we've got really, really low vaccine rates in measles vaccination globally. Because, the focus was on COVID-19 and we were all locked up and what have you. Those viruses don't disappear just because we're locked up, and so we've got all of those things to deal with when we've now got open borders. So we want to start normalizing. Fresh air is a great idea. And even in the context of masking, we all hate constantly being in masks, right? We're not saying this is a great, fun thing to do. It's about protecting thy neighbor. It's about protecting the vulnerable. Why it's so selfish to go, I've had Omicron, that was nothing. Woo, life goes on. It's really selfish to be speaking like that. And the clinically vulnerable person who keeps hearing that COVID's over, or you don't have to wear a mask anymore, what are you doing, is so offensive because it's saying, I don't care about you anymore, is what that sounds like. So from our perspective, masks are the quick fix. Like, slap that on your face and you're going to stop spitting your germs everywhere. So that's step one. While we start implementing things like what's the air quality like in this building? What's the air quality like in our schools? So the masking's the quick fix to start the new process of normalizing that it's not cool to keep inhaling germs left, right, and center, thinking that that's fine and it's not going to impact us. So that's why we've sort of made this stand, if you like. And so it shouldn't be up to individual schools to make those decisions. And so, we sort of provided this opportunity with our open letter called Vaccine Plus New Zealand. that we are a group of doctors and scientists who are saying that this is a bit rough, guys. That this is rough. That kids are going to school with inequities in place. You might be at the school that does everything fantastically. You hardly have infections, and your mate down the road might be the complete opposite. We want it to be normalized that schools don't have to make this decision. So if they need our letter, or parents need our letter to send to the school and say, where are you getting your advice from? Because these experts say different, then that's kind of why we've done this. I mean, that's also not the ideal situation. But
sorry. I was going to say it's such utter horseshit as well. The government saying the schools are I spoke to the ministry the other day. I actually received a letter back from them, and they said, I'll bring it up. Have redacted it a bit from the people who sent it, and they said very much the same thing. Schools in Kura know their community, and the best place to make the decision that prioritise the safety and well-being of their students, teachers, and staff, support staff. This includes choosing whether require masks is right for them. So it's literally got nothing to do with the health situation. And I thought, typically the national government will bring in things like bulk funding, where they go, you're responsible for your school stuff. Normally Labor and the left kind of go, we can help do it in a better way by providing, governmental sort of direction on things like that. But in this instance, we're going, no, we're taking our hands off. You guys die for yourself. But in so many other areas, they would never do that within a school. Yeah. Why are they doing that within a school when it comes to public health? It makes like when the school would be the least qualified to make those determinations.
Yeah. Exactly. And so, because the way we see it is that education and working are not privileges, they're part of life. So, we're in no way sort of saying, let's put in restrictions. We don't even like the term restrictions. These are protections. So the places where we wanted people to feel safe, vulnerable people, plenty of people can't get vaccinated. Plenty of people are vaccinated, and we can't see if your immune response was good enough, and they may get very sick from this virus. So essentially, in our workplaces, schools, we wanted those protections to remain, especially through the winter. It's just frightening. And let's not forget that, our immunity wanes. So over time, even our healthcare workers were boosted quite some time ago. 3 to 4 months, your new vulnerability creeps in again. And again, our vaccines, don't get me wrong, they're still extremely protective against that severe illness. But it's that immediate immune response that will start to wane away. And so we're more likely to get sick, pass it on, and off we go. And as we're hearing, as we hear more and more information about the new variants, more contagious, and you just say, oh God, when's this going to stop? And the answer is we don't know when it's going to stop, right? And so I guess it's normal human nature to just be over it. We're all over it, right?
And we are.
We're done. But being done, the virus ain't done. It doesn't say, oh, cool, New Zealand's done with me, I'm out. We're in this environment now where our vulnerable populations don't matter, is what this sounds like. Because then it's survival of the fittest, everyone get infected. Because reinfections happen, and people have to understand that just because you got your mild dose of Omicron and woo, I can party now, doesn't mean that the next variant's not going to kick your butt and put you in hospital or give you a long-term condition.
I saw an incredibly unhelpful headline just this morning, actually, which ties into everything you're saying. The headline was Omicron may be less deadly than the flu. I mean, that was the headline. And then in the first sentence of the article, you read, I can't actually remember which news outlet it was on, but it was a local one. The first sentence in the article says, because of our high vaccination rates, and, it throws in all that stuff. It's going, and what it's actually saying is that because we haven't been, necessarily vaccinating as hard against the flu as we have done in the past, because, as you say, quite correctly, the focus has been on COVID, that potentially we could have a worse flu season than we've had an Omicron season. But that doesn't mean the virus is less dangerous. It just means we are dealing with a different society now. We're dealing with a highly vaccinated in adults society. We're dealing with people who haven't been vaccinated, may have built up some immunity because they've already had the damn thing. Yeah, there's so much misleading.
It doesn't count for the next variant, though.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think what I would say is going back to that, and it's a great headline grabber, that sentence, "asleep at the wheel." The problem is there's so many different hands on the wheel at the moment as well. You know, you've got media, you've got various groups. I mean, I think we're about to talk about the hospitality industry, and which again is basically going, oh, we don't need this isolation period anymore. I mean, come on. I happen to live with someone who is immune compromised, and I completely feel what you're saying, Anna, with that fact that it feels like there's a lot of people going, oh, well, screw you, you know. It's dinosaur thinking. It's just like, well, I'm fine. I'm gonna and to be fair, if I got COVID, I'd probably be okay, but the person I live with would not. So
exactly. And even from the perspective of entertainment industry, hospo, you know, we all care about, you know, how it's impacting businesses. But be a business that wants me to come back. Make me feel safe.
100%.
No, like you know, like if I see businesses where they're respecting their staff, or you know, okay, we all hate wearing masks, but if the new phase is to monitor your air quality with carbon dioxide monitors and go, you know what, it's probably quite safe in here, then do it. You know, like this should be where the pressure sort of starts going, because as winter creeps in, you know, it's starting to get pretty chilly now. You know, we're going to lock ourselves inside. We're going to be all toasty and warm, spreading around COVID, the flu, RSV, all the new favorites that come through. But, you know, and it's a reminder for anyone in a vulnerable situation to go and get your flu vaccine as well. You know, and so what we are sort of fearing, because, you know, we're in the hemisphere that we're coming into winter, and we're sure we were highly vaccinated, and we're waving through Omicron round one, is that nobody knows what Omicron, flu, RSV, boom, all at the same time is going to do. So we know that when we get infected with Omicron, the reason that it kicks some of our butts, you know, like as in we get symptoms, we feel rubbish, we're in the bed, even though we're triple vaccinated, you know, that still can happen. It's because it evades the immune system slightly. So it's causing damage. It's giving you a rough time, but you fight it off. What we know about long COVID on that post window after getting infected is that some people take a long time to recover from that. That's why we're sort of saying rest through any symptoms, or, you know, if you feel rubbish, keep resting. But imagine you then got exposed to the flu, you know, and then that kicked your butt. And then, so this is what we're worried about, is that compounding of all our favorite viruses kicking our butts all at the same time, and what that's going to do in our healthcare system, you know, and what that's going to do to children who are now getting, you know, worse symptoms from Omicron, especially if they're not vaccinated and all the rest of it. So we're just worried about sort of creeping into winter when it's the favorite time for these viruses, because, you know, that's why they're seasonal. It's because we're locked inside. It's not because, oh, look, it's winter, I better cruise across to New Zealand. You know what I mean? Like that's what sort of creates the seasonal elements, is because winter is a great time to spread viruses inside.
Hey, Anna, this is the same conversation, but I want to move on to, and it's a bit what you're talking about as well, Jeremy, to talk about like the information that we've got, and almost who are the guardians of the information and telling us what's going on. We've already been like 25 minutes, Anna. If you want to stay with us, you're more than welcome. But if you want to cut out as well because you've got real jobs, then you're welcome to do that as well. What would you like to do?
I can kick around for a bit longer if you want.
Okay, probably another 5 or 10 minutes. So
yeah, people are tired of hearing me and Pat talk. So yeah, stick around. Yeah.
So here's something that I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, because one of the things that I've been sort of talking about is we seem to have defaulted to the national number for when we're looking like we're ready to reopen or we're ready to go in. And I've mentioned the number 1,000 new cases per day per million of population seems to be the plateau, which would be deemed quote unquote safe, or certainly a better plateau to go into society and kind of start being a bit more comfortable around where we are. We've been a while, so I won't do it, but I was going to start play the first 10 seconds of this interview where Maddie goes, it's 19th of April. It's like, oh, it looks like COVID's coming to an end. And it's like, it hasn't aged well. But I was doing that as a bit of a joke. So I won't do that. But this is epidemiologist, I think from Auckland University. I'm not sure if this is a colleague of yours, but Dr. Dion O'Neill, who was on Breakfast a month ago, talking about, now this is my paraphrase, but talking about kind of where we need to get to in community for us to kind of feel like we can get back into life a bit more easily, right? So I'm just going to play it so then everybody knows what he says, where I got it from, and then I want to go on to talk about what that actually means, not over the whole country, but per DHB. So let's have a listen to this first.
Right, so a lot of that's going to depend on people's behaviour. So at the moment in Auckland, in terms of what our daily cases are, we look about as safe as we're going to get.
So it's a month ago.
This is mostly looking at what's happened in similar places to Aotearoa overseas. We expect cases after that first wave to plateau at about 1,000 cases per day per million of population. So Auckland's down in that plateau now, between 1,000 and 1,500. And once the rest of the country joins Auckland on that plateau, you'll expect maybe 5,000 cases a day. And we sit there until something changes. And so that could be people changing their behavior and deciding, hey, I'm really...
So not to cut him short on his thoughts, but then he explains a bit more in detail. But I wanted to show people, now, is it fair for me to make that assumption, Anna? Kind of talking about getting to 1,000 per day seems to be that area that we'll get to and be able to function and then look out for increases. Because that's what I've sort of been saying, it's not a target from the government, but it's a projection by modelers as to where we want to be. Is that a fair synopsis of what he said?
Yeah, but as you pointed out, it was the 19th of April as well. So, we now have a change that we've got new variants in the country. Yeah. And so it's the goalposts are going to keep shifting, and one of those plateau reasons is people letting their own guards down as well. Like when we were peaking, you don't get infections if you don't have humans, right? So if you don't have a vector out there spreading it around, then it doesn't spread around. So that was happening, and then then people hear that the peak's coming down, so you might feel a bit more relaxed, and more vulnerable people might go out, or people who have had the virus and they go out too. So yeah, I think it's a fair assumption that, this is what the modelers do, right? They model off behaviors and expectations. So, that's where we were headed. That might now change.
Yeah. And this is kind of what I want to get into about who has the information, because I don't want to necessarily say that this has become political, but I'm using Southern DHB because it's where I live. I have also brought up the Waitemata numbers as well, because that's where Jeremy lives. But my complaint over the whole time is, if there are 345,000 in the Southern DHB, as this document says that we're looking at right now, that means this target, this best ideal, the area for us in the Southern to get to would be about 345 new cases a day. And now I'm thinking about, okay, and that means like maybe we can remove the mask mandates, etc. So what I've done is I've gone back and got all of the numbers from the week before we went into orange, right up until today, that are available for the Southern DHB. And I just wanted to show people what they were. So that red line going across the bottom, that's about 345. So the arrow up here, that's when we went into orange. So when we go, we don't know who to listen to, we don't know who controls whatever the situation is. In Southern DHB, since we went into orange, which is here, there's been one day, which is this one, where the cases have been fewer than twice that amount that we've been told is what we should be aiming to. Most days it's been between 2.5 and 3. Some days it's been greater than 3. So now I go as a parent and a concerned person for people's health. Who do we follow? Who do the principals follow? Because we were talking about masks at the start. I'm looking at the numbers and I'm going, if the whole country was at 15,000 cases a day, which would be 3 times that 5,000, then the whole country would probably be in red. The Southern DHB has been, for a lot of this past time since we went into orange, at more than 3 times that number of cases per day, yet we've been floating around in orange, worrying about people being upset about having to wear masks, allowing 12 and 15-year-olds to make the decisions for themselves as to what's best for a public health situation. And this is what I wanted. I've talked about this a lot, but this is what I wanted to demonstrate to people. Now, this is my DHB. There are some, like whatever the DHB that looks after Hawke's Bay, they seem to be below that 1,000 per. Jeremy, just so you know, Waitemata DHB where you are, 630,000 people. So you would hope 630 cases a day working on that 1,000 per million. Yesterday, you guys had 1,305. So it seems to me that the numbers aren't showing us being safe, whatever safe means, or okay at orange. Now, I guess I've put out there in detail now what my whinge has been for the past month, and I'm happy to go, okay, finally I've explained it. Dr. Anna Brooks, you can jump on this. You're an expert. Jeremy, you've got things to say. Go for it. Because I feel like I'm done. I'm like, principals, if you see this and stay where you are, there's nothing more I can do to, for my opinion, demonstrate why I think that these removing mask mandates and even being at orange and southern is a good idea.
I just want to mention one thing before. Sorry, if you don't mind, Anna. Again, I'm just doing my thing of throwing my uneducated guess out there and then handing over for you to tell me I'm completely wrong. Feel free. But, one of the things that has been said for a long time is that, we can rightfully expect another wave, as you mentioned this, Anna, as people come out of their choice to isolate in many ways. I mean, I certainly have been isolating as much as possible. Plus new variants, plus, now we've got the borders opening and, we're getting rid of pre-departure testing for people coming into the country. There's all these variables. But one of the ones for me is that this idea of people choosing to get back into the world, it's not necessarily a choice that you have 100% control of. I would still work from home every day if I could. But it's becoming more and more common for me that I can't do that. I mean, I'm a freelancer. I'm an entertainer. Live audiences are obviously part of what I do. But the other thing that's changing is people are now asking me to do face-to-face meetings, where even a month ago, it would be absolutely, you would assume that if you were meeting with someone, it was going to be on Zoom or a phone call or whatever. Now I had to go into an office for the first time the other day, for the first time in 2.5 years. I had to go have a sit down meeting in somebody else's office. Now that wasn't my choice, but my choice in that situation was I either break my own personal self-isolation or I don't get paid this week, and that ties into this hospitality industry that we're starting to hear, this idea, well, we need our workers to be able to come to work even if someone in their household has tested positive. Well, that's a big choice to ask somebody to make. Economic security over even a small potential that they're going to pass on the virus to somebody.
Exactly. And all of what you've just said is exactly, where we're at. As in all of those issues. I was the same. So, I'm working from home today, and one of the reasons that the group of us got together to do that letter was that we were about to go into orange, and schools were going back after the holidays, and we work in education facility. I work at the university, I teach there, and we all went, hang on, what? So we collectively, Auckland University at the time, we actually got together, a group of lecturers and went, hang on, are we okay with this? And so it was great because the university was proactive and they said, no, you know what? They changed their language quite quickly. They sort of said masking is no longer required, but, pop it on to walk around. And you're like, what? And so the language kept changing. And luckily for us, we were like, this is a business. We as lecturers want to be back in person. We want the education process to be back to normal as much as possible. But if you slap us and, the age group that had already swept through, largely, it was sweeping through the university age group pretty quickly. And right now, because I think this is second week back, they're all on round 2. Okay. getting their reinfections. So what we pushed for, and thankfully universities took this on board, is that we mandated or at least strong requirement for masking. We don't necessarily want this whole society of policing. We don't want there have to be someone saying, where's your mask? But if the majority of people are doing the right thing with these even requirements, we don't need necessarily to use the terms mandates, like requirements. Please respect people around you. So we were thankful that all that language changed. In the same vein, in the same week, like as in the first week back, there were graduation ceremonies, and we're like, like graduation is a giant room of people of all age groups, vulnerabilities, and there was no mask mandating at those. So, all of these things are a giant mess in the sense that, red orange kind of doesn't mean anything in the context of the virus, right? Like that's kind of what this boils down to, is and there's no difference of how much sort of virus is around, apart from that we had a giant amount at the beginning of red, and then it's just now's good, let's go orange.
Can I add a couple of things here? One is from someone who's watching us right now. Empress says, I let my guard down. Second case in 6 weeks. First one was from my daughter bringing it home from school, and now she is showing symptoms as well. So just to get that out there.
All too common story, unfortunately.
It is actually, and so it's not an outlier. People need to understand that that's not an outlier. Just before you jump in, to echo what you were saying, Anna, about the mixed messages again from the article, going full circle back to newsroom. This is from the ministry. Messages on health impacts of COVID-19 have been unclear. A March 18 bulletin noted tamariki and rangatahi who catch COVID-19 will usually have no symptoms or only mild respiratory symptoms similar to a cold. 2 weeks later, the ministry advised that although milder than Delta, Omicron is not a mild illness. 2 weeks after that, the ministry had returned to saying, for most people, COVID-19 will be a mild to moderate illness. So just to echo your thoughts about the mixed messages.
Yeah, so what sort of happened around this time, or what the sort of bulletin's referring to here, is that we as experts were like, that's not right. We were started to hear misinformation come, from the ministry, essentially. Like things that we heard that your immunity lasts 3 months. We heard all of these things coming out, and we were all cringing. So the things that were lacking in the messaging were that you can be reinfected. Anyone can get symptoms, regardless of your vaccination status. And some people are going to get their butt kicked. You're going to be really, really sick. It's not to say that some people are not going to be affected at all, because we absolutely know that. And thank goodness, right? We've had over 1 million cases. If everyone got really sick, we'd be in big trouble. So it was just that the most up-to-date information was not coming through. We never heard reinfections. I don't even think it's still being talked about.
I just wanted to say that the reinfection message has just not gone through at all. I mean, I know people who are on their second infection, and it's just not there, and not just in New Zealand. I know the US just had 1 million deaths. Joe Biden's just announced that the flag's going to fly at half-mast in the US, but it's still the absolute prevailing wisdom around the world is once you've had it, you've had it. That it's like chickenpox or something, that you're done.
It's crazy. Yeah. So exactly. So all of this information was missing, essentially, that, it is not mild, any spectrum of symptoms can happen. Absolutely get reinfected. And on that note, also, how easy, I did my own test last weekend, like as in, how easy is it to get a rat test right now? Like as in free, and have I got symptoms and am I sick? It's not easy. I'm in the Waitakere DHB area, and I was like, I said I need to do a test because we were having a family event, and there it said go get your test. The map, I clicked on the map directions. Oh my god! It said Henderson, like as in it took me. So my Google Maps took me to Henderson. It didn't take me to where I could pick up my rat test. So I was kind of just proving a point that even if, there was a family in my street that were all sick and needed a rat test, it should be easily accessible, right? That was a 35k round trip because I didn't know where on earth I was going because the map didn't tell me where to go.
That's really interesting to hear, because I was actually going to ask you, Pat, too. I think that's another thing that sort of gets lost a little bit is the differences, and I was going to say regional differences, but we're in the same city technically, Anna. And for me, I've had to get rat tested. I know I've had to have a rat several times over the last few weeks, and it's been incredibly easy for me, partially because a lot of them have been provided for me at work. And also, I can literally walk down the road. 5 minutes walk down the road is a dairy with a pharmacy attached who will either do a rat for me or sell me one. But that's not the case everywhere.
You can get that
not for free. I can actually. I'd need to drive 6 minutes to get a free one. But that's because of it happens to be the suburb that I live in. I mean, like I said, you're probably 20-30 minutes drive from my house, but you've got a 35k round trip. And then Pat and Dunedin, I mean, I don't know.
Jerry, you know this, everywhere is 6 minutes, so actually it wouldn't matter if it was the other side of town. But no, to be honest, I know exactly where it is, and I have bought I've had 4 boxes of rat tests. I went to the station, which is a drive-through station, and it was the one that had 1,000 students a day at it when this first kind of this Omicron started. And now you can literally drive in; there's no one there.
Yeah.
And I just said to them, this number of people, and they handed me 2 boxes, and then I also bought 2 boxes to have in the cupboard. And I'm going to go back there today just because of my youngest, and say we've got someone who might have it. Can we have some more? And I'm sure they'll hand us a couple more boxes. So I know where the station is.
But my point is, and I guess this is actually a slight digression, but I just found that really interesting. What you said, Anna, is that there can be a difference suburb to suburb. It's not just city to small town to region, and like you say, financially, I could walk down the road. I could afford $9 or whatever it is, but there's a lot of people who are going to choose, do I spend money on a test, plus you got the psychological thing of if I do test positive, then I'm not going to work this week. Yeah.
And that's why I did this on purpose. I too could have gone to the pharmacy and bought one, but I wanted to literally demonstrate to myself how easy this was. So I literally clicked, I used the app, I logged a test, and I clicked on the where's my nearest one, and there was only 2, and they were both decent drives, but it became a massive drive because I didn't know where on earth I was supposed to go, because I was just listening to the map saying turn right here, and then it said you've arrived, and I'm like at an intersection.
For people streaming this outside of Auckland, by the way, can I just point out Henderson is a large suburb, and the streets are confusing at the best of times.
Yeah, but the point on the map that Google Maps took me to was just the giant intersection that is obviously referred to as Henderson.
The train station.
I then had to pull into a car park to then look up the address. So I was just proving a point, really. So, and that point is that how accessible are these tests? How for all suburbs. And like if it was my choice, if I was running the country with, keeping everyone safe, like it is wonderful, if your industry you're in and your workplace has freely accessible tests, a rat test, if you're in a high turnover area, like where you're unmasked, fine. If you're doing a rat every day or need to, great. We know that you're not generally, they're generally good enough to know that you're not infectious, especially if you don't have symptoms. So if we had loads of our industries or schools, oh my God, being able to have regular tests, that's what keeps us safe. And to me, that's what would help with hospital industry, entertainment industry, wherever you go, if you know that all the staff are tested regularly, great. But, all of this stuff costs money. It does. And so I think, we are just in a new political playing ground, if you like, where we're in this orange, whatever that means. Most of us don't even know what the restrictions are anymore because are there any? Or what does that mean? And so I think, I think we don't really know what's coming because we don't know what this new variant or the new variants that circulate. We don't even know what is circulating. remember in our wonderful, when we were in our elimination phase, we knew every case and every single test was sequenced. So now it's going to be a surprise, when we get very sick people with a new variant, because we don't have surveillance testing in the same way. And now that's stopped at the borders as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. As of
And
today,
certainly-
I think.
And
Bring
certainly
in a
not,
new variant. Yeah.
certainly not popping out of a cake surprise, which would be a nice one. It would be the opposite.
Yeah.
Hey, Anna, I feel like we need to offer you co-host status now.
Completely agree.
Where we have guests and we have co-hosts, and you've basically been with us the whole hour. We've sort of touched on some of the other stuff we were going to talk about, which was a hospitality thing. So I think we're just going to, George, why don't you jump back in, mate? Because I think we're going to leave it here. George has been in the background ferreting away, and this has been. I guess without trying to sound arrogant, like we're the shit, but this kind of conversation feels really important for people to know and to hear. And it doesn't sadden me because this is a new product we're launching, but I would like everyone to see this conversation today, as opposed to the few hundred that might to start off with. But so if you've seen this or you're watching this, feel free to share it around, because, and I'll just do this again, not because it's yay us, but because I spent a big budget on my graphics and this, like TV and Z budget on my graphics. Just remember for you and your DHB, this red line here for us is supposed to be where we're kind of able to function on a place that's not going to turn into a massive spike. And these are all the days of new cases back before we went into orange. I can't reiterate this so much. If you're a principal watching this in Dunedin or in the Southern DHB, and I'm not saying you should follow my advice, because this is not my advice. This is the raw data saying that there's still a fuck ton of infection out there, and maybe we should be following
another technical term. Yeah,
there's a technical medical term, technically, that we should be following the advice of the epidemiologists and the health professionals, maybe not necessarily to the government at the moment, who is getting some heat for being a little bit too controlling, so that's my 10 cents.
Yeah.
George, you've been listening in the background, mate. You're the best looking and smartest of all of us. Is there anything you want to add into this conversation?
No, I mean, just as always, I've been increasingly surprised by the lack of masks at the university in Dunedin. Like, it's just sort of shocking how just one day it sort of just suddenly all the masks were gone.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Yeah, yeah, they really are. Well, they think.
Yeah.
All right, team. Hey, Jeremy, thanks for joining us. Anna, don't go anywhere yet, Anna. We'll wrap up all together like we're all one team today, because that feels like it has been what it has been. So, George, thanks for the work you do in the background. We didn't start the conversation on closed Swarbrick and harm minimization today. We will put that into the start of next week. We have covered off on the conversation around a little bit around hospitality with that conversation we just had. But most importantly, in my opinion, the conversation around where COVID is right now, what the health professionals are saying, what your principal's saying for your kids. I mean, it feels like when I talk about it getting political, let's just say, I don't know what the right word is, but it's becoming more populist than it's becoming perhaps healthcare focused. And I would encourage anyone out there to challenge their principals for saying, no, we're not going to force mask mandates. Do your own numbers first. Look at your DHB. See how high above that 1,000 per million people you guys are, if you are. And feel free to challenge. I'm not talking about be a right winger in America and turn up to the public meetings at schools, Dick, but let them know. Let them know that, as the leaker for the ministry said, they have a responsibility to try and keep our children healthy, as we all do. And I don't want, for me personally, and I'm sure we'll all agree, that the structures around our kids to be the things that fails them to continue this on any more than it has to. Mm-hmm. And with that, I'll say thank you so much for joining us, Anna. It's been amazing to have you on. Thank you for responding to my sort of last minute tweet, but this has been unbelievable. Jeremy, as always, dude, thanks for jumping in. Love you to bits. And George, you're amazing. And thank you for being involved in the help and the work we're doing in the background. Remember, everybody, next week, we're going to do this at 10 p.m. We're going to try a week of 10 p.m. So I'll be saying next week, I'll be saying good morning to everyone at 10 p.m. at night, just so we're clear.
Brilliant.
So that's what we're going to do for a week. We're going to try it at 10 p.m. and we are going to see if you like some late night conversations with us, our news conversations. Maybe Anna, I don't know if you're a late night person, maybe you want to come join us again. Yeah. Very good. There you go. Anna's in. be a co-host next week, and we'll see you guys. So it's Friday today, isn't it? Yeah, because it's COVID, so it's COVID day. I lose track. So that means on Monday we will see you at 10 p.m. Unless, of course, my youngest becomes positive and I'm sick on Monday. And that's a possibility. And then you'll get George at 10 p.m. on Monday for a Marxist conversation around the problems of the capitalist world. Hey, George.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. All right, then. Thanks for joining us. Thanks all you guys again for being involved. It's been a great episode, and we'll catch you 10 p.m. Monday night. Hooroo.